I'm Rob Trzynski, and I'm running for Congress in Virginia's 5th District and its possible future 6th District. Donald Trump's war with Iran seems to have come to an abrupt end, and we can now say with some degree of certainty what the result is. And it's looking like a comprehensive strategic defeat for the United States. He lost the war, folks. Donald Trump took the greatest military power the world has ever known, and in less than 2 months, he comprehensively lost a war against a second-rate, maybe third-rate power, and basically just accepted their terms for our surrender. And worse, before this, Iran was a declining power. It faced constant revolt at home, the loss of its allies and proxies in the whole region, economic collapse. Iran was on the ropes. But now Trump has actually elevated it, giving them in some ways more power and influence than they have ever had. And yes, I'm talking about the Strait of Hormuz. This is this narrow choke point in the Persian Gulf between Iran and the Arabian Peninsula. And it's hugely important because a bunch of the Arab states have to ship their oil through that choke point. Up to now, America has been able to guarantee that ships could pass through there freely and without being attacked. Even during the tanker war in the 1980s, this is when Iran and Iraq kept attacking each other's ships, the U.S. Navy kept the Strait of Hormuz open. But not anymore. The Iranians managed to make it too dangerous for shipping, and now they control traffic in and out of the Persian Gulf, and Trump has basically just accepted that. And he's talking about letting Iran charge a $2 million a ship toll for oil tankers to pass through, this huge source of revenue for the Iranian regime. So just in the last 24 hours, Trump went from basically threatening genocide against Iran, saying if they didn't give in, I'm quoting here literally, a whole civilization would die. He would kill their entire civilization, and then he completely tacoed. Trump always chickens out. And he admitted defeat. Somebody on social media wrote, quote, "I can't believe I woke up relieved today that we lost the war instead of mass murdering people," unquote. And I'll tell you, that's a heck of a position to be in. In retrospect, the big war crimes threat was actually maybe the sign that Trump was about to give in. It's a tell he has, the thing he does, that when he's backed himself into a corner, he makes a bigger and louder and more outrageous threat. I think he feels that if he puffs himself up and ratchets up the tension so dramatically, he can then make it look like somehow he won by accepting whatever deal the other side offers because they were forced to negotiate by his fearsome threats. And I guess he hopes no one would ever look at the terms of the deal to check if it was actually a victory. But that's what we need to do. I use the phrase strategic defeat, so I want to explain what that means. There are all sorts of examples from history where one side can achieve a bunch of tactical victories in the short term, but still have a strategic defeat. They win the battle, but lose the war. America exists because that's basically what we did to the British in the American Revolution. We didn't win all the battles. We just ground them down until they couldn't afford to fight us anymore. So how do you tell if you've lost strategically? In a case like this, it's not that the Iranians are going to invade us and take over the United States. What we ask is, did we achieve our strategic goals or did we fail to achieve them? And did they achieve their strategic goals? So we have to know what our strategic goals are. And, well, that's part of the problem because Donald Trump announced a whole bunch of different strategic goals. But it's actually a pretty easy question to answer because it doesn't matter which of those goals he announced, he failed at every one of them. And then he managed to fail at ones that weren't even on the list. So for example, did we want to change the regime? Well, we failed at that. Iran has become more hardline. Its theocratic dictatorship has become more entrenched. We killed a bunch of the leaders, but a regime isn't just a roster of leaders. It's the whole system. And we didn't change that. We reinforced it. Did we permanently end Iran's nuclear program? No, they have as much enriched uranium as they did before now, and they're making no promises to give any of it up. And now they're going to have a bunch of money to rebuild it. Did we destroy their missile program? We destroyed part of it, maybe half, according to some estimates. But no, it's not gone, and they've been very effective at using drones. And now they're going to have the money to rebuild all of that, too. So all the things we set out as things we might want to do as possible strategic goals, we failed at all of them. But we also failed at things we didn't even think of. The biggest is the Strait of Hormuz, which was open and toll-free before we started, And now Iran is using it as leverage against the whole world. They just said today they're going to shut it down again to prevent Israel from doing something. And this is way bigger than just one trade route. Since World War II, since even earlier than that, the world has depended on the freedom of sea routes, the idea that no one can block one and set up some outrageously expensive toll booth. If we let it happen here, and we just let it happen here, who knows where else it will happen. And it gets worse. The Iranian government is also demanding withdrawal of U.S. troops and bases from the region and an end to decades of sanctions. These are things that weren't even on the table for discussion before this began. So Iran is weaker in some ways in the short term because we blew a lot of stuff up, but they are way stronger in the long term if we think strategically. Now, all this happened because of Trump's instincts told him that the war would be easy and quick and the Iranians would fold. So he had absolutely no plan for what would happen if they didn't. And his only option after that was that he had to fold. But it's not just because of that. As I've been saying since this whole thing began, this happened because Trump refused to go to Congress and get permission from Congress to go to war, which is one of the most basic provisions in the Constitution. Congress declares war, not the president. And if he had come to Congress, they would have had the opportunity to ask a bunch of the hard questions that Trump didn't ask. They would have asked, why are we doing this now? What are we trying to accomplish? Can we actually do this? What are the risks? What if they close the Strait of Hormuz? Really basic stuff like that. So this strategic defeat is Donald Trump's loss, no doubt, but it's also the responsibility of Congress, especially Republicans in Congress, who just sat there like a bunch of potted plants and did nothing while Trump drove us over a cliff. This war is the perfect example of why we're supposed to have a Congress and why it's supposed to exercise its powers to check the president. And it shows us the costs we're going to pay and keep on paying if we don't start having a real Congress for a change. That's why I'm running, and that's what I'm asking you to vote for.